do you believe? A young mother could look straight into the eyes of her 3-year-old daughter, then kill her, without hesitation just because she wanted to be free to live with her new lover. This case happened in Bihar, India. It shocked the entire nation, not only because of the cruelty and coldness of the mother, but also because she planned the murder, based on a script from a crime TV show. The body of the 3-year-old girl was found in a red suitcase. It was left on the roadside, near a crowded residential area. And what horrified everyone even more was that the killer was none other than the child's own mother. Let's go back to the moment the suitcase was first discovered, then follow the story. As the truth unfolds, the mother's confession is revealed and the trial ends with a controversial verdict. This heartbreaking case happened at the end of August 2024 in the city of Muzaffarpur, one of the major urban centers in Bihar, eastern India. This is a densely populated area, with hundreds of narrow residential alleys, where life remains difficult, and child protection services are still limited. The victim in the case was a 3-year-old girl named Mishti. She lived with her biological mother, Kajal Kumari, 25 years old, in a small rented room on the outskirts of Muzaffarpur. Kajal had been married, but the marriage broke down not long after she gave birth. She lived separately with her daughter, had no stable job, and occasionally worked at shops or did part-time domestic work. According to neighbors, Mishti was a quiet and well-behaved girl. She was often seen playing around the yard, or standing at the door waiting for her mother to come home from work. Despite living in poverty, she was always close to her mother. Many people in the neighborhood never imagined that the same woman Mishti hugged every day would be the one to take her life. Kajal Kumari was described as a quiet person who was not very close to those around her. Near the time of the crime, she began a romantic relationship with a strange man, who was later identified by police as her lover. Kajal was frequently absent, leaving her daughter alone at home or temporarily in the care of neighbors. What made the case even more disturbing was that, according to the investigation, Kajal had watched the television show Crime Patrol many times, a program that reenacts real murder cases. She had learned how to dispose of a body, how to plan the concealment, and how to mislead investigators from what the show presented. No one, not even those living nearby, could have imagined that one day, Mishti would mysteriously disappear, and her body would be found in a red suitcase left by the roadside just a few hundred meters from home, from an ordinary rental room in a small alley. The case quickly became the center of attention in the entire city. Hundreds of journalists, police officers, and forensic experts arrived at the scene, and from there, the truth gradually came to light about a mother who was willing to kill her child to gain freedom for a secret affair. On the morning of August 25, 2024, in a residential area of Muzaffarpur, Bihar, a local resident was out for his early morning exercise when he noticed a red suitcase lying unusually by the roadside near an empty lot close to a rental area. At first, he thought it was discarded property or luggage that had fallen from a truck. But what made him uncomfortable was a strange smell lingering in the air as he moved closer. The man smelled a strong stench, like that of a decomposing animal. Suspecting something unusual, he immediately called out to nearby residents to come and look. A few curious people unlocked the suitcase, and the sight inside left everyone stunned. Inside was the body of a small girl, roughly wrapped in a thin cloth, her body discolored, with no signs of life. One woman burst into tears on the spot. Another person vomited from shock. No one could believe their eyes. A child stuffed into a suitcase like discarded trash, abandoned by the roadside, right in the middle of a crowded residential area. The residents immediately reported the discovery to the local police. At around 7 a.m., a task force from Muzaffarpur police station arrived at the scene. They sealed off the area, called forensic officers to handle the body, and collected evidence around the suitcase. Police quickly determined that this was not an accident. but a serious murder case involving killing and body disposal. The information spread rapidly. Residents of the rental area gathered to watch. Many broke down in tears when they learned that the victim was Mishti, the 3-year-old girl who often played in the yard and called out for her mother every afternoon. Some neighbors recognized the clothes the child was wearing and confirmed that the mother, Kajal, had not been seen since the previous evening. The community reaction was one of outrage and horror. Many people shouted, "How could a mother do this to her own child?" Some believed that Kajal might have been kidnapped or forced. But others grew suspicious, recalling that she had shown unusual behavior recently, often absent from home, rarely playing with her child, and frequently taking phone calls in secret. In less than 1 hour, the name Kajal Kumari was placed on the list of suspects. Police reviewed security cameras around the area, collected witness statements, and quickly launched a search. Because the mother was no longer in the locality, the case shocked public opinion from the moment it was discovered. An innocent child was brutally murdered, placed into a suitcase like discarded goods. And the main suspect was the very person the child trusted every day. Immediately after receiving the report and securing the scene, Muzaffarpur City Police launched a series of initial investigation steps. The red suitcase containing the girl's body was sent to the forensic department for examination, while the entire area around the discovery site was thoroughly searched. From tire marks to shoe prints or traces of blood inside the suitcase, besides the victim's body. Police found a thin cloth wrapped around the body and a few strands of hair with blood, suspected to belong to the killer. The girl's body showed little decomposition, indicating that the time of death was only a few hours before being discovered. There were clear strangulation marks around the victim's neck, proving this was a murder by hand or with a soft object with strong pressure. There were no signs of a struggle at the location where the body was dumped. No bloodstains around the suitcase. No suicide note or message left behind. Police concluded that the crime scene was not where the body was found. The girl had been killed elsewhere and later brought here for disposal. Investigators quickly traced the identity of the victim from neighbors' accounts. They confirmed the victim was Mishti, 3 years old, daughter of Kajal Kumari, who had been renting a room in the area for nearly a year. But when police arrived at the mother and daughter's room, the door had been locked from the night before. No one had seen Kajal since the day before, and her phone was completely turned off. Kajal's mysterious disappearance was immediately recorded as a suspicious factor. There were no signs of break-in or theft in the room. Most belongings remained untouched. However, on the cement surface of the rooftop of the house, police found a dried bloodstain that had been poorly cleaned. Forensic officers collected a sample for analysis. At that point, the only person on the missing list was Kajal, the biological mother of the victim. No one else was injured and there was no clear suspect. But neighbors said that in recent days. Kajal often left home at night, sometimes taking her daughter with her, but returning alone. Someone even saw her arguing with someone on the phone. Based on witness testimonies, police began to suspect the mother most. Kajal's call data was urgently retrieved. One of her most recent calls was to a man living in Sitamarhi, another city about 80 kilometers from Muzaffarpur. Coincidentally, the same man had recently been seen by residents picking up Kajal. The early clues were still scattered, but all of them began to revolve around the only woman who was missing, the one who should have been the key witness, but had now disappeared without a trace. On the very first day of the investigation, Kajal Kumari, the biological mother of the victim, was listed as the main suspect. The reason was very clear. She was the last person to be with the child, and she was now missing under unusual circumstances. At first, police also considered several other theories, such as an attempted robbery, where the girl was killed to silence a witness, a distorted child kidnapping case, or even Some people believed that Kajal might have been forced to kill her daughter, or that both mother and child were attacked together. However, within just a few hours, these theories were quickly ruled out. First, Mishti's body was still fully clothed, with no signs of sexual abuse or undressing. No belongings had been stolen. There were no signs of forced entry or illegal intrusion in the rental area. Second, if this had been a kidnapping or a revenge killing, the perpetrator would typically leave clues, messages, or make contact with the family, but in this case, there was no ransom demand, and no strangers were seen around the time of the crime. The biggest irregularity was the act of fleeing. Kajal left her home right after the child was killed, turned off her phone, informed no one, and showed no signs of being forced. This led the police to believe that she was not a victim, but the perpetrator. From that point, the investigation began to focus closely on the mother's actions, gradually uncovering the entire truth behind the crime. The most important turning point in the investigation came from phone data. When police extracted the call history and GPS location from Kajal's SIM card, they discovered that she had made multiple calls to a man living in the town of Sitamarhi, nearly 80 kilometers from the crime scene, right after the time her daughter's body was discovered. Kajal's phone was last located in that area before it was completely turned off. Following the lead, police identified the man as Kajal's boyfriend, someone who had been in a romantic relationship with her for several months, notably, according to witness statements. This man had visited the rental room of Kajal and Mishti many times and showed discomfort with the presence of the child. When authorities raided a house in Sitamarhi, they found Kajal staying there with her lover. She was immediately arrested. At the time of arrest, Kajal did not resist, but appeared confused and exhausted during the interrogation. Kajal's initial statements were evasive and full of contradictions. She claimed not to know anything about her daughter's death and said she was being set up by someone. However, faced with a series of pieces of evidence, from phone location data, bloodstains in the rental house, to witness testimonies, Kajal began to break down. The breakthrough came when she admitted that she was the one who killed her child. The motive was that her lover did not accept Mishti, and notably, Kajal confessed that she got the idea of hiding the body in a suitcase after watching the crime television program Crime Patrol. From that point, the image of the killer was no longer a desperate mother, but a cold mastermind, willing to kill her child in exchange for her own freedom. After many hours of silence in the interrogation room, Kajal Kumari, the 25-year-old mother, finally bowed her head and admitted to the entire crime. Her voice was hoarse, her eyes tired. But her confession was so cold that the entire investigation team fell silent. Kajal stated that she had a romantic relationship with a man named Rahul, who lived in Sitamarhi. At first, it was just online conversations. But gradually, the relationship deepened when they started secretly seeing each other. Rahul clearly said, "If you want to be with me, do not bring your daughter." At that time, Kajal remained silent. However, over time, the pressure grew. Rahul began to avoid her and asked to break up. Kajal tried to hold on, but the man coldly said, "As long as the girl still exists, there is nothing between us." From that moment, Kajal began planning to eliminate her child. She said it was not because she hated the child, but because she felt trapped and wanted to be free to love and restart her life. Even more frightening, when asked about how she carried out the crime, she calmly said that she had watched an episode of Crime Patrol, in which a murderer used a suitcase to hide a body, and she thought it was a clean method, less likely to be discovered. On the night of the crime, she lured Mishti to the rooftop with the excuse, "Mommy will show you the moon. There." She strangled her daughter with a silk scarf. Mishti struggled in silence, unable to call for help, after making sure her daughter was dead. She laid the girl on the rooftop floor, then quietly went downstairs to get the red suitcase she had prepared the day before. The moment she placed her daughter's body into the suitcase, Kajal said, was the only moment she felt her heart tremble. But she still did it. She wiped the blood roughly from the floor, dragged the suitcase out of the house near midnight, walked a few hundred meters and left it by the roadside like an old item. She did not shed a single tear while telling the story. She did not justify her actions, nor did she blame anyone. Only one sentence left the entire interrogation room speechless. I knew I would be caught. But at least now, he might accept me. What made the situation even more outrageous was that, throughout the relationship, Rahul had never promised to marry Kajal or live with her long term. Everything was just vague promises. But to the young mother, it seemed like her only way out. Kajal's motive, according to psychological experts, was a mix of emotional distortion, emotional dependence, and a loss of moral awareness. She did not have a mental illness, but her behavior was identified as extreme and inhumane. A 3-year-old child, who still called out mommy every day, died because her mother believed that love was more worthy than motherhood. And it all began with a wrong relationship, a careless word, and an irreversible decision. After the body of 3-year-old Mishti was found inside the red suitcase, Muzaffarpur police launched an emergency manhunt across the entire state of Bihar. Thanks to phone location data and information collected from neighbors, authorities quickly traced the movements of Kajal Kumari, the victim's biological mother and the main suspect. Less than 48 hours after the case was discovered, Kajal was arrested at her lover's house in the town of Sitamarhi, nearly 80 kilometers from the crime scene. She was arrested while hiding in a small room, with no intention of turning herself in, when she was handcuffed. Kajal did not resist. She only quietly lowered her head. Her lover Rahul was summoned for questioning but was not prosecuted, as there was no evidence showing that he was an accomplice or directly incited the murder. After her arrest, Kajal was placed in custody and brought to trial at the Special Criminal Court of Bihar. The first court session took place in October 2024 and attracted significant attention from Indian media. The courtroom was crowded with journalists, local residents, and child protection organizations. In court, Kajal did not cry. She admitted to all of her actions, recounting everything in detail, from planning the crime to the moment she placed her daughter's body into the suitcase. However, she could not clearly explain why she chose such a cruel method. When asked if she felt regret, Kajal replied briefly. She said she could not go back anymore. The defense lawyer requested a reduced sentence, arguing that Kajal was under psychological pressure, lacked family support, and suffered emotional harm from her lover. However, the prosecution completely rejected this argument. They stated that no circumstance could justify the killing of a 3-year-old child. On December 5, 2024, the court sentenced Kajal Kumari to life imprisonment without parole under Section 302 of the Indian Penal Code, the charge of murder with aggravating circumstances. In addition, she was prohibited from filing an appeal during the first 5 years of her sentence. The verdict received strong public support. Many believed it was a deserved punishment, but still not enough to compensate for the unjust death of Mishti. Child protection organizations jointly called for stricter monitoring of minors and proposed harsher penalties for crimes involving the killing of biological children. To this day, Kajal remains serving her sentence in a prison in the state of Bihar. Her lover has cut off all contact and left the area. The rented room where the mother and child once lived is now abandoned, and no one dares to rent it again. So in the end, the mother was sentenced. She will spend the rest of her life behind bars, and Mishti, the little girl, will never grow up, never call out mother again. But the question remains, what if there had been no selfish lover? What if society had reached out more to a single mother? What if Kajal had not watched a crime show looking for the wrong escape? Could the crime have been prevented? A 3-year-old child died at the hands of the one who should have protected her. But the silence of the community, the coldness of the lover, and the indifference of society, are they not also to blame? Who do you think is truly responsible in this case? Share your thoughts below, because sometimes justice is not only in the verdict but in our own awakening.